Hi, welcome to UiPath Training Session 2. In this session, we will cover the listed contents: introduction to data types, available data types in UiPath, understanding their uses, creating a workflow using data types. So let's move to the introduction of data types. A data type in programming or in RPA is a classification that specifies which type of value a variable has, and what type of mathematical, relational, or logical operations can be applied to it without causing an error. A string, for an example, is a data type that is used to classify text, and an integer is a data type used to classify whole numbers. Below are data types which are available in UiPath. So the first one is generic value. This is used to store all type of values available in UiPath, be it integer, be it string, be it a boolean, or whatever that is. So it is kind of a global variable which stores every type of value in it. The next one is string. String is basically used to store the text values. And the third one we have is int. We call it integer. It is used to store the number values. And the fourth one we have is date and time. It is used to store the date values or the time values, be it date or time in seconds, or like what anything which is related to time, it can store in it. And then fifth one we have boolean. It is used to store the true and false values in it. And we have the table, which is used to store the data tables or data table of the values, like which will have columns and rows. So this table data type is used to store the table values and the table contents in it. We also have a few more data types in UiPath Studio, like list or objects, but that varies. That depends upon the requirement or the application which we are automating. So basically, the object is just to integrate any application to UiPath. Is like that application will be considered as an object. And then list, we know that it's a kind of an array. We can store the values in array. We can store the values in list. It's always vertical. So let's go to UiPath Studio and see what we have available as a data type. So if I go to design pane, and I will find create variable option in here, you can see we have 6 type of data types available in here. But if you go to here in the variable pane, and if you click here just to create a new variable, and in variable type, it's a data type basically, you can find multiple data types in here, like a boolean, which is true and false in here. And date and time is like a date variable or date data type. And then number, which is integer. Text, which is a string. Generic value is like the variant data type. It can store any value in it. And the table is the data table. So let's create a simple workflow or a simple sequence, and let's see what we can make out of these variables, how we can use these variables in it. So what I'm gonna start with, the generic value. So in here, if I create, let's create from here. Gen variable. So let's see what kind of data type it selects here. So it's a generic value data type. So it can store text, it can store number as well. Let's try to store text in it first. So how I would store the text in it, let me select this activity in here. Let me drag it in here, the sign activity. Now I have a gen variable, and this time I'm gonna store one string in it. Stating text value. Okay, and I'm also gonna show it in the message box just to check whether there is no error in it. Okay, so okay, I'm gonna run it. See, it taken the text value in it, so it's showing the value which is there in the which is stored in that variable or in data type. So this time I will try to put numeric value in it, like number 5. It's integer value basically. So let me run it again. Yes, it's working as well. Now true, which is boolean type, true and false. I'm trying to store a boolean value in it. Let's see whether whether I'll be able to store it in it or not. Let's check it. Okay, here we go. So as I've told you that we have this generic variable which can store every type of value in it. So let's move to another type, which is text. Let me create one from here. String, a text variable, text var. Okay, so now I have text variable in here. Let me store some value in it. See, I'm trying to store the boolean value in text variable, in text data type, but it's not able to store it in it because the data type is different. It is limited to store only string values in it. So as we can see, there is an error. What it says is like compile error encounter processing expression true. Option strict on disallows implicit conversion from boolean to string. So which means it doesn't allow any other value to get into it which is not string. So let's try integer value. Let's try to store integer value in the string data type 1 2. Oh, again there is an error. Let's read out the message. Option strict on this allows implicit conversion from integer to string. So it means it cannot store integer value in it because it's a string value. It's a string data type. So let's try to store string value. I am a string. Okay, here we go. Let's try to run it. Let me change it first. Okay. Okay, here we go. So as we can see in here, the text or the string data type can only store the text values. Okay, now let me create another variable or another data type, which is number, which we also call integer, uh, int var int variable. So the default value is always be 0 when you create an integer variable or data type. So now try to assign some values in it. We have integer. Let's try to store a string in it. Okay. See here, as we can see, the value is taken as a generic value. So we need to change it to int 32 in order to make it integer. So now it's integer. Now I'm gonna try to store string value in it, just to see whether it is able to store it in or not. So now, like, I am a string. Hey, we have an error. What it says, option strict on this allows implicit conversion from string to integer. Means we cannot store a string value in it because the data type is integer or the number. Okay, let's try a different data type. True, which is boolean. Now it cannot store the boolean as well. What it says is we cannot convert boolean to integer, of course. So it can only store integer values. So let's try to store 1, 2, 3. Okay, here we go. And in message box, as we know, the message box reads strings in it. Means if I need to show any value in it, I need to convert it to the string. So now I have int var, which is integer. In order to show in the message box, I need to convert this to string. Okay, let's run it. Here we go. Okay, let's try the fourth one, which is date and time. Let's create one. Date variable. Okay, so as we can see here, the variable type is generic because we're creating from the global side. From here, if we create from here, we can simply select date and time here. Go to browse type and date time. Here, it's in system. So the data table or the type of the data is date time, means the variable type is date time. So now we can store new date time and with the patron this is the default value when you create from here. If you create from here, there won't be any default value. Then you can assign some values. Now let's assume that we have created this values from here, and it's a date variable, and try to store some values in it. Okay, you cannot convert integer value to datetime because as I mentioned that only the generic variable, the generic value data type can store every kind of value in it, and rest are restricted to their data types. If it is string, it can only store string values in it. If it is integer, it can only store the integer values or the number values in it. If it is boolean, it can only store boolean values like true and false in it. So irrespective of any value, generic variable or generic value can store any value in it, irrespective of any data type. Okay, so date variable, I can't store it, of course. If I write date dot, okay, we have function now, but let's see what will be the output. So in basically, if we talk about Visual Studio, or sorry, Visual Basic or C#, we have this function to represent a current date and time. Okay, date variable to string, to string, to string. Okay, let's run it. Here we go. It shows the current date and the current time. Similarly, like other variables, you cannot store different values in it, rather irrespective of their data type. So now we can store only date values in it. We cannot store string, integer, or boolean in it. So this is all about date time variable. You can create a new date patron like a new date or something in here, like we have already seen that when you create new variable from here, it's like new date time. It's in this date time. So variable, you're creating a new values in it. So in it you can pass any value. So let me remove it. Let me go to the another variable, which is true false, which is boolean variable. As I've checked global variable here, so it's like we are creating variable from here. And when I say global, it means it's a scope of the data type or the variable which we are creating. If that is checked global, means it is it can be used in entire workflow because the scope is global. It is not limited to this sequence or to this activity. It is open to other activities as well, until and unless those activities are in this flow chart, this global workflow. Okay, so the default value is false. If I write boolean here and I try to pass string in it, like I am a string, will it accept? No, it won't. What it says, you cannot convert string to boolean, of course. And if you try to store number value, no, it won't store the values. Now what we can do is we can only store the true and false. It is kind of a flag. True, it can be either true or false. So the default value is false, and now I need to change the value to true, and here boolean to string. Okay, let's run it. Here we go. If I store nothing in it, of course we have used this activity, which is assign activity. You cannot assign null to the values in here because it's set to not null value. You need, if you have dragged this activity to your sequence, you must store some value. You must pass some value from right to left, and then the left side you should have a variable or have a container to store that value which is on the right side. Okay, let's move to the last data type in the list. Okay, it's a new data type. It's a table variable. As you can see here, the default value is new data table. If I set to global variable, it can be used in an entire flowchart. So let's create, the scope is the parent workflow. Okay, so this is the new data table. The new data table has been created. Once you run it, the new data table is created, and now I have the data table. What I need to do is let's try to add some values to this data table and loop through the values and show them into the message box. This will be our last exercise in this video. So let's create. If you type data table, you will see the data table functions in here. Let's add column, 2 columns to the data table. It's you can leave it blank. If you have already column, if you have column in place already, then you can write the column name here. Otherwise, you can create a new one by giving it a name, like name, and type the data table, which is tableware. Okay, the type of argument will be object. You can change it based on your requirement. Okay, it allows db null. Okay, if you check it, it can store the null values in it. But if it is unchecked, means you cannot store the null values in it. The null values won't be allowed. Okay, so the first and the second I need as an age, and the data table is table where. Alright, now I have 2 columns in my data table. Now I need to store some values in it. How we can store the values in it? Let's try to add rows. Let's add 3 rows. Okay, the first row. Okay, you can simply write, like now I have 2 columns, so you need to pass 2 values in it. The first is the name, and another one is age, right? If you have data row in place, if you have already the data row which you have values in it, then you can pass the data row value in here. If you don't have anything yet, then you can create by yourself in here. So the array always starts with this, and then the values, like the first name. If you're writing something in string, means the name is in string and the age is in integer. So let's write John, comma, age or something like 25. So, okay, so the first column is done. Just pass the data table, which is tableware. All right, and similarly just copy it and go to the next data row. Mary, she's 26 then. And table variable, go to the third one, paste the value, change the name Alex 30, and the data table is table where. Now we have table, we have columns in it, we have rows in it. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna loop through the table and show the values in it. Okay, so it's for each space, for each row, and I can drag that message box in the body, and for each row in what? In data table. Here we need to provide the data table name, which is a table where. Okay, so now it will iterate this list or this table with the row, and what should be the expression in message box. Well, what I'm gonna show is I'm gonna show name give one space in it, and person row dot, or simply row bracket 0 means the first column, and give space age row 1 to string. Don't forget to put toString in it, because if it is string value it won't accept this, then there will be an error to the string. Okay, our expression is done. Okay, let's run it. Okay, the first name is John and the age is 25. This is what we have, yeah. And second, we have Mary. The age is 26. Cool. The third is Alex and age is 30. Okay, so this is how we can use these variables, and this is how we can make up the expressions based on our requirement. So we have almost covered everything in this video. For today's session, we have seen the introduction of data type. We have seen the available data types in UiPath. We know how to use them, and we have tried in the sequence using those variables. We have created one workflow using the for each loop to iterate the values in the data table. So thanks for watching.